Welcome to the Pro Wrestling Shoot. Today, I am joined with the Universe Mode head developer, Cristo. Cristo, what is going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, Jesse. How you doing?
I am fantastic, man. Is this your first official? This is your first official interview, right?
This would be the first official interview I believe I've done. I've done blog write-ups in the past for Universe Mode, but I've never really done a person-to-person interview or talk before. So yeah, I'm excited, a little bit nervous, but mostly excited.
A little bit nervous. It's okay, man. It's okay to be nervous. I'm really honored that you made the time to come on the show. Thank you so much for that. Got a lot of questions for you, and just feel free to answer them however you would like. It's a lot of stuff from the community, a lot of the stuff from me. Universe Mode has been what in the game for many, many years now. So it's definitely a fan favorite mode, and we will just kind of kick in, man. The Universe Mode is mine, along with the majority of fans' favorite modes in the game. I think it's safe to say without community creations and Universe Mode, the game wouldn't really have a hook for fans to keep playing all year long. But at the same time, the players feel like this mode gets probably the least amount of love every single year and things added to it. So to put some context to the mode, we probably had this mode around since what, SmackDown versus Raw 2011.
That sounds about right, and that's when I first remember coming in.
Okay, so you've been with the company since the THQ days, then.
That's right.
Well,
I
that's awesome.
started as a temp tester for SVR 2009, and just been kind of along the way, the entire way, in one capacity or another.
Awesome, awesome. So, how just to, I guess to get your perspective from things because I'm not a game dev. I just play these things, buy them every year. But how hard is it to work on a universe mode? I feel like this is a very complex mode. We've heard it in the past from other developers. We've heard it from people behind the scenes, and we've heard fans talk about it for years now. How hard is it to work on a universe mode every single year? I feel like the community really needs your perspective on what goes into a universe mode each year.
Sure. I'm not sure how deep I can get into the nitty gritty about it,
Okay.
but just a little bit of context is that it's typically been a pretty low, a small team driven mode ever since its inception. Especially when you compare it to some of the headcount on some of the other areas of the game. Um, Most recently, we've really started ramping up, and our team's grown, and we have a really awesome team working on it now. Um, But along the way, when we're looking at the mode, the biggest obstacle I think has been really the back end infrastructure of it. It's something that's given us a lot of trouble for expanding. It's given us a lot of stability problems, which I know everyone's kind of experienced and is definitely a priority of ours that we're looking at. Um, but that's probably been the biggest thing. Is like as we've taken this project on with 2K20, is really just kind of going into uh, I think the one of the front the most often used terms is spaghetti code. There's a lot of it in there, and we're really our engineers are doing miracles cleaning that up and just rebuilding it from scratch. So it's something that we're really taking seriously when it comes to making the mode a lot more stable and easier to build on.
Okay, so that actually puts a lot of perspective into it because so you're saying that you guys are still kind of working from the THQ and Ukes days with the code that you guys are just kind of rebuilding it from what was there originally.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, that yeah, I can't imagine how difficult that would be. It's a long-winded mode, but just know that the fans, they have high hopes for this mode every single year. This is I want to say it's the bread and butter of the WWE games. The other modes are fantastic. We've got the My Rise, we've got the showcase modes that we play every single year. The My Faction now is pretty new addition for the last couple of years, but I definitely want to say that the community creations and the universe mode, I don't want to think that the fans would be upset if that was all that was in the game. I don't want to throw that out there because we like all the other modes, but I just know that those are the two fan favorite features within the game. So I know the hopes are always high when it comes to that. I got a question, and I know you're probably prepared for this question because it's all over the internet. And um, so the most requested features to make a return: show intros, promos. Is this a possibility for this to ever come back, or is this just a real issue when it comes to dealing with that code that we were talking about?
I wouldn't say it's really necessarily based on the code, that we're
Okay.
we're looking at. Um, I can probably talk about some of the ideas about why promos were removed, and just our general thoughts every time we think about it. Like we hear the requests; it's not something that we're ignoring.
Right.
With anything that we want to do with the game, there just comes it's a matter of balancing, the amount of hours and resources it takes to kind of put those things in, and also just kind of like the feasibility. With promos, actually really kind of just in awe about the response that from players about the removal of it. Um, the general the general perception that I kind of understood was that it was okay. It wasn't really that great.
Right.
Um, it was something that I think we as a team just felt like the quality didn't really stand up over time. It was kind of a really big first push to put the inclusion of promos into the game, and for what we did, and when it was first added, I believe that was for 2K17, 18 for my career.
Yeah.
It was pretty big, um, and that was just something we were able to adapt into Universe. But the scope of it was um, really gigantic. That it took an individual designer to manage it, all of that, along with several contract writers, sending in lines, and the designer polishing up those lines, making sure everything kind of fit within our game, and made sure that everything kind of sounded like it was coming from one written voice. Um, the number of lines that they managed was staggering, 5 digits long. I don't know the exact number of what it was because I'm probably going to just exaggerate for what it was, but it was easily in the tens of thousands of lines.
Yeah.
Um, that designer is David Friedland. He's
Oh,
now on, he's the lead design of Create. So it just kind of came down to like, okay, well, we can keep promos in and have someone looking over that year to year, or we can have someone kind of driving design or driving create. So I think it's kind of like that's kind of like a big thing that really is one of the deciding factors. Like, okay, well, that's understandable. Create's a really important thing. It needs a lot of love and growth. Um, the other thing with promos is that again, the maintenance of it was staggering. Um, like I mentioned, with the amount of lines and even just the testing background. Like, how does our QA check and make sure everything's working right, everything's triggering right when there's that many sorts of permutations. So it was definitely something we kind of did with like a huge written content, a huge amount of written content. But in hindsight, it's kind of like, wow, we worked really hard on that. We could have worked a little bit smarter on a different way to deliver that, maybe, so that it wasn't as much content and it was much easier to sustain. So I think one of the challenges we look at with thinking about promos is how do we how do we justify that absence that it's been since 2K22 that's been missing? How do we, if we were to look at that, how do we justify bringing that back in a way that's like, okay, this was worth taking it offline, and now it's back. The other way we think about is like, how do we deliver on the quality of it? Because I think every time I hear promos, it's like the expectation is people want to hear the superstars talk. They want to hear the expressions and that cadence that they're all known for, the personality, the lines, the delivery. Um, it's it's to do that is a staggering amount of work, and the technologies to really help that are iffy at best and bordering on some challenges in a worst case scenario. Um, so there's a lot of thought being put into it, and every year we're thinking about it. Like, can we do this? What can we do? Um,
so
yeah,
so touching on the voice, I know that I hear that a lot too, and I completely understand how much work that would probably be to get every single super. You guys have a massive roster each year within these games, so to get every single person to do a voiceover and different lines every time to where it doesn't get stale would be insane amount of work. But in the world of 2024, we have AI. Is that something like a chat GPT or anything that you could add to kind of get that voiceover to work, or even implementing like a create a story? Like I know we had create a story years back, right? Like having us type our own promos out to where you guys wouldn't have to be dealing with that. Some sort of creative feature that we could add within a scene in the universe mode at some point. I know a lot of people have requested create a story to make its return because a lot of people love downloading the stories off of community creations and just having a different experience with the game all the time. But to incorporate that with a universe mode, I think would be massive.
Yeah, that's something we've definitely kind of talked about in terms of create a story, like how that would that sort of aspect of being to enter, allowing players to enter their text for promos to create their own essentially. When we talk about these sort of AI technologies and machine learning, um, I don't think that's really necessarily my call to make. That
Right.
definitely comes from people who can make those decisions and people doing the research and technologies. But personally, I feel like I think I tried alluding to this, but I don't think the technology is really hitting that quality. And I think there's also some really morally questionable areas about some of the use of that technology when we talk about like some of these superstars who have unfortunately passed along. Is it right to sort of replicate their voices, that sort
I
of thing? And
100% agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
That it could also mess with just likeness in general, and cause issues there. I just figured I would ask the question if it was something that the team has ever talked about, but you put it into a pretty understandable way, I would say. Just messing with wrestlers that had passed or anything using their voice, and we know is I laugh, but we know how the community can get sometimes when it comes to some of the things created or even posted on community creations. So I couldn't imagine the type of voiceovers that we could be running into. So, but typing out a promo and incorporating that would be a huge step in the right direction, I feel like, and give fans a little more hands-on creativity and expands the imagination, I guess, a little bit more within the universe mode when it comes to your rivalries and everything else as well. Um, Hope to see that something like that in the future because one thing that Brian has always told me is that if a feature goes away, chances are it's coming back bigger than ever. So I understand the team puts their heads together and tries the best way because you wouldn't want to just bring promos back the way that they were in 2K19 necessarily, but make them bigger and better. What about show intros? What's going on with the show intros?
show interest is something that we're also always talking about. Um, that obviously, I don't think by its nature of existence is going to be as big as promos. Not a lot as many challenges that we have to really deal with there.
Right.
But like with many of the other features, that it is, it's just a matter of balancing, the everything else that we're doing with the game and how much you know h- what resources we have available to us, sort of thing, and is this the right time versus these other things that we're doing. It's something we're thinking about as well. Show intro, I think, personally speaking, the show intros that we've had pretty much since the universe's inception, I believe, have
Yeah.
been largely the same pre-canned animations for the different types of arenas, slightly altered pyros from year to year, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement. So I think when we do eventually get to that point of looking at show entries again and trying to get them back in the game, it will be bigger and better. I think Brian's right on that.
Is a draft ever returning to the mode? I've heard many. I have to ask. I laugh because I know that I've heard from other people that this is another issue that um, some of the devs were dealing with within the universe mode. Can you talk about the draft and what goes into having that into the universe mode at all?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I'd like to do with Universe. Whether or not that's my decision is not always not
Right.
always the case, right? Just to kind of just to put that out there for as a disclaimer for everyone listening. But I think when we look at the draft, obviously GMO is kind of a thing that's got its own rule set, its own structure. It's not as sandboxy as Universe. It has its own sort of hooks and levers to really adjust and pull from when it comes to like what decides to draft and where the superstars are coming into play as they're being picked from shows, even as the player decides to choose them. For Universe, it's a little bit different. I feel like we don't quite have as many hooks and levers that we want uh, to leverage when it comes to a draft. Um, and that part of it comes from the general design philosophy is that if we put something into universe mode, we need to make sure that it works for the players that are actively trying to use it, and the players who just want to experience the mode. They don't really want to go heavy on the editing. So something like a draft needs to be able to run itself if the player doesn't want to take, it doesn't want to participate in it.
Right.
So along with that kind of comes with logic behind how is a superstar drafted. What priorities does the logic or the AI kind of prioritize for picking a superstar for a show, and then also a general rule set to try and recreate what you might see on TV of like, okay, well, champion for champion picks happen sometimes. Sometimes entire teams get drafted, so we need to make sure the other side gets a proper amount of superstars.
Right.
Something to kind of keep it not as predictable to really make some of these picks really exciting. It's like, whoa, okay, and Raw just got 5 superstars in one draft. So what is SmackDown going to get, and that sort of thing. Um, and then probably the other biggest consideration is making sure how these features work in a customized calendar for users, um, because that can change everything. Like we can design something to fit in the confines of like you have a Raw, you have a SmackDown, you have an NXT. Here's how this all functions, right? Raw and SmackDown draft and NXT can be a supplemental pool, but now how does that all work out when some player might have just one major show or might have 6, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of consideration that we really need to make sure we cover when we kind of talk about these features. And this is kind of what makes some of these features a real big challenge to tackle and makes some of them really big.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. It's a massive sandbox at the end of the day on what you're doing, and yeah, I'd hope to see something like that. I understand about the draft, but some of the other features, hopefully, we can get a hold of them and get them up and running the way that the community wants them. Once again, this is a fan favorite mode, so everybody's got high hopes for this, and it's got to be hard doing what you guys do in the amount of time that you guys have to do it. So we would always hope that in the future we can get a 2K game to stretch a couple of years to get the most in, but then there's also worries that the game could be outdated as well when it comes to likeness or attires or anything like that going into the game. So and also once again, it's not always 2K's call. That's probably a WWE thing too, who wants the game released yearly, and 100% understand that. So multi-man rivalries is a thing that has been asked about for quite some time now. We've always had the single man rivalries, the one-on-ones, and we've had the tag teams. Now we've incorporated war games since last year. We have war games in there, which is now our Survivor Series, which we would hope to get an 8-man tag rivalry going in the universe mode, or even just triple threat rivalries, fatal 4 rivalries, something different along the lines of that. Has the team ever spoken about trying to put something like that together in the future?
We have. That's definitely been on our radar as kind of like a natural growth for the rivalry system, which we rehauled with 2K23, we improved with 24. It's something that we definitely want to grow and iterate on, because, like you've mentioned, that the permutations for rivalries has been really, really limited and it's very predictable. I personally feel like that's definitely where we can get a lot of value, is where we get some of those bigger rivalries going, especially as stables are becoming much bigger feature prominently on TV. some of the big, some really big groups are popping up and have been dominating for quite a while now. So that's something we want to definitely try to keep up with.
While playing the universe mode, I feel like the fans want that ultimate WWE experience, right? But without the features I've previously mentioned and little features such as like number one contenders match, war game rivalries, and even a second night to WrestleMania leaves fans doing a lot of editing within the mode and using a lot of imagination. Are there any plans to add features like the number one contenders, the second night to WrestleMania, anything like that to kind of give them that authentic WWE experience in there? Because I've noticed the last couple of years we've still kept WrestleMania one night, and it's just on the Sunday pay per view, and we're not able to put like a PLE on a Saturday. Is that does that mess with things when we change that around as well?
Uh, so a lot of the stuff that I full disclosure again, can't talk about anything that we're doing for 25.
Right, right,
Um, but we definitely look at a lot of these features that we hear the feedback from, like this feels like it's missing from TV. This feels like it's missing from the WWE experience. Um, we look at that sort of thing and make an attempt to chip away at that every year. Um, that it A lot of that stuff is definitely something we want to do. Kind of just make sure that we get on parity at some point or as close as possible to get that better, more full WWE experience. I've had some stuff on my bucket list of like, okay, it's years old at this point, but again, like there's a limit to how much we can do every year, and some
right.
things don't make it, some things don't make it for multiple years when more priorities kind of come up. But um, yeah, we're listening and we're trying our best to get some of those things in there. And it's
Do,
definitely some things that we want to do.
so you said you had a list. Do you have a list of ideas and things that you are wanting to try to incorporate in the future? You don't have to expand on the list or what you're gonna be doing, but is that a thing that you have and I all these ideas to put things in?
Yeah, every year, all of the ideas and designs that we write up that don't really quite make it into the cycle, we put on the shelf and we revisit those every cycle. Unfortunately, some have been on there for a while, just for one reason or another. But uh, yeah, it's all stuff that like we feel like is gonna really kind of improve the overall quality when we get to it. Um, and we're hoping that we can eventually get there sooner than later.
Does it ever get frustrating working on a universe mode at all? I'm sure it does, but it seems like it's one of the most difficult things to do. Like you said, it's an open sandbox and a lot of things can happen within the mode. You have features, moving parts that are a little intricate within the mode. Money in the bank. We have, titles that are just natural bugs that happen within the game as we patch things in that could possibly affect universe mode as well. You just you never know what kind of issues we're running into when it comes to patches or DLC that we're adding in throughout the year. How frustrating is to go back in and try to fix some things that are possibly going wrong within the universe mode?
Yeah, I'll just say, yeah, sure, it can it can be frustrating at times. It can be really frustrating, and sometimes it's like, oh, that's annoying. Why does this keep
Yeah.
popping up? Um, it's I don't want to sound like a robot. Like, yeah, we're all people on the design team. Like, we see some of these issues. It's how did
Of
that
course.
get in there? Why is this now popping up? And if only we caught this, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It happens. I think especially early on in my career, it was really stressful when some of the stuff when would get through, and it's like, this is like it just eats at you from the inside. It's like it's one of those things that I got some really good advice is that you really can't stress over the things that you don't have any control over. Like if
Right.
we just do our best and we hammer away as much as we can, it is what it is at the end of the day. And we're doing our best, and sometimes things get through.
Right.
Um,
And as much as people
that's
hate to hear this, you're never going to please everybody.
Yeah, yeah,
That's just a thing. And I don't know what goes into making a game, but I'm sure, especially a yearly one, when you only have so much time to pump this out and you have an intricate mode like the universe mode. Um, I couldn't imagine what goes into something like that. A few ideas from the community that are actually questions from the community. Are tournaments ever going to make their way to the mode, such as King of the Ring? Are we gonna see a return of a pay-per-view possibly? Is this has this been talked about without the team?
We've talked about it, well, along with a lot of other stuff too. But yeah,
Okay.
sounding like a robot, and I'm sorry, but yeah,
That's okay. That's okay. I understand that we can only, get answers to expand on so much because of the yearly games, and 2K25 can't give away any details. But um, little request for me, what I've noticed in the universe mode, a tiny detail fans would welcome, I think, is when editing the roster of a respective show, seeing an icon that indicates which roster each superstar is currently involved with. That way, there is no confusion while adding roster members to the opposing brand. Um, the one thing that is probably frustrating to a lot of people is when they're going to edit their rosters. Um, there's so many people that we put on each roster that we probably can't see what show or remember what show we put them on. I think like a little icon beside their name could possibly be helpful. I don't know if the team has thought about that at all, but just a little. No, I'm just throwing. Look, I'm shooting my shot. I'm throwing it out there. It's just one little idea. Hopefully, we can see in either 25 or 26 or something. But backstage segments are another thing that this is what the community is asking. Our backstage segments, interviews, or backstage attacks, something the team are talking about. Features like this could really help out the imagination of building a great story with a rivalry within the universe mode.
it's something we're looking at somewhere down the line, right? I can't say if it's this game, I can't say it's the future, but
Right.
yeah, it's we're aware of it. We definitely want more content to kind of fill out the rivalries, especially with some of these cutscenes running as long as they have. I've seen the cutscenes too. I know they've been there for a while, right? It's there's only so much that we can do when it comes to that front.
Right, right. I understand. I understand. That would probably come in terms of a rivalry action, right? Like if that was to ever make its way into a game, a backstage segment, interview, or even backstage attacks, that would just be the rivalry actions again, or would
Yeah,
that
I
just
think
be
you're
its
pretty
own?
spot on with that. That's
Okay.
that's how I would envision that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too when I was seeing that in the community. So I posted it obviously on Twitter to get your questions in. I posted it on our YouTube community. So that came up a lot. Backstage segments, interviews, backstage attacks, just something to have a little more diversity, I guess, when it comes to the rival reactions instead of just being the same ones, like you said. How far away are we from an online universe mode? Could this ever be a possibility?
um, I have no idea. That's
That's
it's
a
not
big
something
one.
that we haven't ignored. Like we've heard the request before. Um, but something like that, hypothetically speaking, kind of comes with a lot of challenges to figure out how
I'm
does it
sure.
even operate. Right?
Yeah.
But
I
would be fun to tackle eventually. I feel like when we get to a really nice spot where we've gone like, okay, we really got a good parity with the programming and we see we got a lot of these features nailed down, maybe we can look at something, exploring some online mode or play,
right.
whether it's like cooperative or invasive or something like that. I don't know.
I think that's the way I've always envisioned it. If it ever came to be a possibility, was just with one person and an invite only, or maybe you invite them to your saved game that you saved online, and they can just kind of pop into the session with you. But I don't know how it would work, but that's kind of how I've always envisioned an universe mode working online. I would never expect to have a universe mode that had like 8 people popping in and out of it. I don't know
Would be a
how.
little chaotic.
Yeah, a little bit. And has the team ever had discussions maybe about possibly merging the My GM with the universe? Because the 2K team and Visual Concepts have just kind of built the My GM from the ground up. And as you said earlier, we're still kind of debunking some of the code when it comes down to the universe mode from the days of THQ and Ukes. Has a merge ever been discussed to maybe get certain things like the the draft and the promos, all that stuff built in?
Yeah, that was one of the things we talked about really early on. It's kind of like the design philosophy behind GM mode and how similar we wanted to be with other modes. We definitely wanted them to have a different place rather than just feel like one's the extension of the other, or feel like this is just kind of like a rule set of maybe like if GM mode was a rule set with universe. And I think there's a very, very different expectation of what players wanted out of a GM mode versus what we're providing with the universe. Um,
There's
yeah,
a
it's
lot.
something we talk. Sorry, God.
No, no, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that there's a lot of feedback online. When I mention a merge, everybody's like, "No, I don't want the logistics in there. I just want that free sandbox when it comes to the universe mode, kind of thoughtless and mindless to just pop in there. I don't want to do all the work." My thought process on emerging the GM mode and the universe mode would just be to still have that sandbox, but maybe pull in different I don't know, just different features from the my GM mode to come up on it. But I don't know what your thought process would be on something like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool stuff that we've done with GM mode. I say that as having worked early on in GM mode as well too. Did a pretty big chunk of design work for that pretty early. Not so much for these later iterations. Tyson's been killing it with GM mode.
Yeah,
Christmas Sanus also did a really amazing job with GM mode for 22. Um, but um, I think one of the things that would be really fun to really experiment with a universe, just kind of as an idea out there, is we did a little bit of this with Superstar mode, but it's sort of adding these sort of rule sets to the sandbox that okay turns this as like a free experience into a sort of game in and of itself. And we could look at some of the different things that we do with GM mode as like maybe there's a in between like the classic and the superstar mode is like oh maybe there's a sort of show mode sort of thing.
yeah,
That might be kind of fun to do eventually. But yeah, the two modes definitely serve a very different purpose and sort of entertainment factor. I think we don't have any plans to really merge those anytime soon.
fully understand. Hey, Christo, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming onto the show, guys. Go and pick up 2K24 if you haven't. Support the mode. Leave me some questions in the comments. Follow us everywhere at the Pro Wrestling Shoot, and we'll see you next time right here on the channel. Take it easy.